So lovely to see so many of you on and you're coming in still. So that's great. Were you on yesterday? Did you manage to make day one? Let me know. Some of you, I recognize your names. You were able to come on. Great. I hope you found some useful information from day one. Oh, you missed day one. Okay. There is a recording. I believe Nelma sent out the recording, so yes, do look out for that. If the recording hasn't gone out, I will send it out today with today's recording as well, so you can catch up on both. Okay, so for those of you that haven't been before, let me tell you what happens on these sessions. Oh, you didn't receive the recording. Okay, we'll definitely get that sent out to you. So these sessions this week are very unusual because I'm doing a session every day. Usually I do sessions like this on a Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I'll be talking something to do with divorce. So it's always good to have you join me on those as well. But this week I'm doing something every day. And on Thursday, which is the last day of this 4-day roadmap, that's the day that I moved into my family home that I purchased after my divorce. So it's almost celebrating finally stabilizing and settling down. Some of you would have heard my story yesterday, so I won't go into it again today. But obviously, if you're watching the recording from yesterday, then you'll hear a little bit about me. The way that it will work today, I'll talk for about 20 to 30 minutes and then I'll answer some questions. So if you've got any questions for me, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions because finances brings up so much, put them in the chat box and I'll try and come to them after I've presented what I wanted to talk about. But yesterday there was interaction. I felt like I wasn't just talking to a screen. So I'm really looking forward to you guys interacting with me. Say hi, let me know how you're doing. I'll keep an eye on the chat box actually during the talk so that I can see what's coming up for you guys. And it's really nice when you interact with me so I don't feel so alone talking to just a screen. So let's start. Today I am talking all about finances. Let me just share my screen. That would be a good start. I hope you can see that okay. Yes, brilliant. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so let's talk about day two. I should have it on day two. So we're talking about financial clarity and division of assets. It's quite a complicated area. And so lots of people will have questions around finances. A lot of what you'll be asking me will be quite involved, and sometimes it's difficult to always answer questions. I can only give you general information because I don't really know enough. But the kind of things that I'll be covering today will be how you understand and document your finances when you're going through a divorce, and also what is a fair division of assets. And it's quite a lot to cover in 30 minutes, so I'm going to give it my best shot. So let's see what we can do. Okay. So yesterday I showed you kind of the process that I go through. This is a 7-stage, almost what I believe are the 7 stages of divorce. And obviously I've simplified it a little bit. I did explain some of them yesterday. And today we're talking about number 4, which is finances. And tomorrow I'll talk about children. So just so you can see where we're up to in these 7 stages. So what do we need to look at when we're trying to understand your finances? It's what is a financial settlement? It's a really important topic because not everybody knows what a financial settlement is. So let's talk about what that could be. And as I mentioned yesterday, to be able to get to a situation where you've shared your assets, what you need to do is put your agreement, when you get to it, into a legally binding agreement. And you need that to be a financial order from the judge. So financial settlement is really important because you will have assets together. They may be in your name, they may be in the other person's name, they may be in joint names. And these assets would form part of your marital pot. And these assets are there to be shared. How you share them is a little bit about what I'll talk about today, as much as I can. Once you have shared your assets, or once you've agreed how you're going to share these assets, then this is put into the consent order, which I mentioned. It's also called a clean break order, a financial order by consent, all of these names. And basically what this document does is it finalizes your claims, gives you certainty. Everything that you've agreed becomes legally binding, and you are then bound by it, both of you. You can't change your mind. You can't say later on, I want more. You can't say, I've run out of money. Now what? Now can I have more from you? So none of that. You need it to be completely legally binding so that you can't claim on each other again. So a court does like this sort of financial order, but we have to look at what can we put in the financial order. So your financial settlement covers what happens to all your assets and liabilities, whether there's any provision that needs to be made for maintenance. Sometimes you can share assets, but also you might need to share income. So there may be a child maintenance order that's needed. It may be that you need spousal maintenance, because if, say, for example, you've given up work, your career, to bring up the children, to look after the family, it might be that your income is not sufficient for you to manage. And if that's the case, you may need spousal maintenance as well as contribution towards the children. So let's have a look at what your assets could be. These are things like property. It could be the property you live in. It could be rental property, investments like ISAs, shares, anything like that, savings, cars, pensions, businesses. So these are all assets. So when I talk about assets, I'm talking about all of these. And this would be assets in your sole name, assets in the other person's name, and assets in joint names. So sometimes you will find people talking about certain things, certain assets that are not going to be included in the marital pot to be shared. This might be something like, say, for example, you received an inheritance before you got married, and it's before you got married. It's nothing to do with the marriage. It may be fair to say that that should be left separate and not be shared between you and your spouse when you're going through a divorce. So that's something to bear in mind. Then we have liabilities. What are liabilities? And again, in your name, you may have credit card balances. You may have a loan that you had taken out, say, for example, to refurbish the property. You might have money that you owe to another person, so a family member. You might have things like shop accounts. So, these different shops will have cards, accounts that you can open there, and you can buy clothes, you can buy different items and pay back later. So we also need to have a look at what debts you have, because when we put all of this together, then we get an idea of your financial situation. So this is something that you can do yourself. You can start putting together a list of the assets that you have, all of those things that I mentioned, and a list of all the debts that you have as well. Because we can't really come to an agreement, we can't really decide how you share what you have until we know what there is. we also need to know what it's worth as well. It's not enough to just look at the what you have. We have to definitely look at all of the different things that make up the value of your assets as well. So I think I've talked a bit about this and I haven't been moving my slides along, which is really annoying. So we are looking at assets, liabilities, and potentially maintenance if you have income that you need to get from the other person, just because it's that you don't have sufficient income of your own. Let me tell you how to document this as well. So I have got this document available for you, and we can share it with you as well via email. So when we look at this document, and I'm going to stop sharing my slides and I'm going to actually go to the document so you can see it. Let's have a look. See if I can find that. Yes. Oh, it's the same thing. That's no good. I need to pick up that particular document and take you through it. There we go. Can you see that okay? I hope you can. So here I have assets and liabilities. And when and you can have this sheet so you can log all the documents, all the assets and liabilities you have. So when we are looking at what you have, you first put down your property and you're looking at the valuation. So a valuation can be obtained from an estate agent. You don't have to pay for a valuation. You could ask an estate agent to do that for you, or you could have a look on a property portal like Rightmove and get an idea of what your property is valued at. And then put down any mortgage that you have, because that is very relevant to the valuation of the equity. So equity is your property valuation minus any mortgage. That is the actual asset that we need to note down. Just putting down the valuation of the property wouldn't be sufficient. It's really important we consider what your mortgage is. And some people will have a second charge on their property. So they may have got out another mortgage, possibly a loan that they've put against the family home. You might have 2 or 3 rental properties. Do the same for those. Get them valued, find out what the mortgage is, and put down any notes here about you may have got 3 valuations and you've decided taking the average of all of those valuations. So we need to know what your assets are valued at, and that's the point of this sheet. Then go through and list out all your bank accounts. Name of the bank, type of account, the balance on the account. And again, any notes there, because you may have an account that is the children's money. Possibly you've been saving up for the children. So it's definitely worth making notes on here as well. And then we've got investments. So these, as I mentioned, could be shares, they could be ISAs, anything like that, that you have saved up, you've invested, could be crypto, which is something we're seeing a lot more. So who owns it? What type of investment is it? What's the value of it? And you'll see that along the way, the whole thing. We need to put down the value. So for shares, we put down the number of shares, we put down the company that the shares are with, and the current price per share. So then that will give us an idea of the value. And again, we've got national savings accounts and we've got bonds as well. So you'll see that there. Excuse me, I'm dog sitting. The little dog gets very upset when somebody comes to the door. Jewelry and watches. Now, this is quite an interesting one. Everyone asks whether you should be adding jewelry. You could put it down. You might just put that written valuation down, or if you've got an idea of what it's valued, put that down. If it is gold, you could get an idea of what gold price is and work that out. Some people would say they prefer to leave jewelry out and watches out because they'd rather just that go straight to the children. But obviously, it's worth noting down what you have. If you have any art and antiques, then obviously include those there as well. Any other assets. So this could be businesses, for example. You might have a business that is part of the pot. It needs to be valued, and it's quite a difficult thing to value. The first way of getting a valuation for a business could be asking the company accountant, and they could provide you with a written valuation of the business. It may be later on you might want a different valuation. You may want to get an independent valuation, especially if the business is worth a fair amount. Then you could get someone to value it separately, independently, so that you've got a written valuation done for you. In the first instance, don't spend too much money, get the accountant to give you a valuation. And then another type of asset is money that's owed to you. So if somebody owes you money, if, for example, you lent your friend £100,000, I mean, that would be a very nice friend, then you would put that there because you've got the expectation that you will get it back. So you would put the money owed to you down as well. Then we've got pensions, and you would note down all your pensions and the name of the company and the cash equivalent value, which is the most important valuation for pensions on divorce. It's not generally used for anything else, but a cash equivalent value is the pension valuation that the courts would expect to see. So you have to give them a call and obtain that valuation. It's not what's on your summary that you get every year. If you contact them and say, what have I got? That won't be the right valuation. You have to specifically ask for the cash valuation, cash equivalent valuation. Only then will you get the correct valuation. And then we note down all the liabilities that you have and the amount still outstanding. So what we would like you to do, if I was looking at your settlement, I would want to see this from you, and I would want to see this also from your ex-husband or your ex-wife, so that we can get a picture of the total assets. It's not enough just to know yours. We kind of need to get an idea of what you have together. Once we have that, then we can move towards how do we share it? The sheet also has income and expenditure, so it's quite useful to do this exercise. I always ask my clients to do this exercise because here we can put down your income, the different forms of income you have, and then what your expenses are currently. You might want to do this with a view that when you are not living together, what will your expenses be? Because you might find that some of those expenses go down. You've only got one income now, but you've got slightly less expenses like clothing, mobile phone, potentially food. You might not have two cars, so you're only looking at one car. So you have to go through it and fill this in. We also allow for contingencies and other. You may have different expenses, so feel free to just add in lines in here and fill it in with your expenses. You can go through your bank statements and have a look at what you are spending. But this is just an approximation. You don't have to put the absolute exact figures. But yeah, just wanted to share this with you. So while I'm talking to you about noting down the value of your assets, liabilities, income, and expenditure, you get an idea of what this looks like. So we'll share that with you so that you can fill it in for yourself. If you haven't done anything like that already, you may have done already, but yeah, if you haven't, then it's definitely worth doing that exercise. Okay, so assuming that we know what you've got there and we found out what your financial situation is between you and your spouse, how do we then look at sharing these assets? And it's this is the bit that people find really difficult. I mean, sometimes even getting to a financial picture is really hard because everyone will have different valuations. There'll be things that people miss out. Some things will be hidden, some things will be confused. So it is quite a difficult process to get a full financial picture from the other person often. But you have to try and get to that point where you've both disclosed everything, you've been transparent, you know as much as possible, and then you can look at how do you share it. And when we're looking at how to share a couple's assets, we have to look at Section 25 of the Matrimonial Causes Act. This gives us these factors that we have to take into account for fairness. So I'm going to go through them a little bit with you. And I'll give you some scenarios as well, so you can see how we might actually put a settlement together, which can be quite a useful thing. It's quite good to see potentially how it could work. So we've got Becky and Andrew. They've been married for 20 years. They've got two children, Wayne and Bobby. Wayne's 14 and Bobby is 16. While Becky is working full-time, Andrew has only worked part-time for many years because Bobby has a health condition that requires a bit of care. And so Andrew has been at home on the whole, caring for Bobby and the family. So how do we look at these factors in relation to this family? So the first thing here is needs and resources. Needs are things like housing needs. Where do you need to live? How big does your house need to be? Where does it need to be located? And we're looking at income needs and pension needs as well. So looking at the couple, Becky and Andrew, both parties' housing needs are similar because they've agreed that they will spend equal time with the children. Their housing needs would be a 3-bedroom house because they've got two children and they both want to have half the time. So Andrew has income needs, which would be met by keeping his mortgage installments low so that he can afford to pay it from his income, which means he needs more capital. Andrew also hasn't been paying into his pension, so his pension needs would be met by getting a pension share. So we might consider a pension share in this case so that part of Becky's pension could be shared with Andrew so that we know that on retirement they've got a chance of getting similar income. Resources, when we talk about resources, what do we mean? We talk about any other resources the person might have. So this could be assets which have been left out of the marital pot. For example, if there was an inheritance and you'd kept it in a separate account, which you received before you got married, then potentially you could leave this out of the marital pot. So it wouldn't be there to be shared, but we know that you have this money. So it might be considered as something that you could dip into to buy your own home if you're the person that has these assets that are left out and you need them to buy a family home. So it's a little bit complex with resources, but you get an idea. So the children's welfare, which is the next point, is absolute priority. So we have to consider what is best for the children when we are sharing assets. So for example, if Andrew still has to work part-time because he's caring for Bobby, it may be that he will need to live in the family home because he can't get a mortgage anyway. And it might just be easier for him to meet Bobby's welfare needs. If they are sharing 50-50 and they're in a position where both Becky and Andrew have to reduce their working hours, then this would be different. So it just depends on the circumstances and what the couple need to do to try and meet the children's needs. For some of you, it may be that meeting your children's needs means that meeting, the welfare principle, what is best for the children, might be that it's best for them to stay in the family home. It's best for them to stay in the school that they're at and stay in the area that they know so that things aren't changing so much for them. But we would have to look at your circumstances and work out what is best for the children for your settlement. The third one here is length of marriage. We take length of marriage into account because if you've been married for 30 years, it's considered a long marriage, and it's more likely that you would share the assets 50-50. If you'd been married for a year, so, completely different situation, then it's likely that you would leave the marriage with anything that you came into the marriage with. So if you owned a property in your name and you got married and the other person moved in with you, if you had only been married for a year, it's likely that you'd be keeping that property. If you bought a property together, then you would keep anything that you had in your name before marriage, and you would share the any proceeds from that property if you sold it. So that gives you an idea of why length of marriage is important. The next one is contributions. And this is always something that people will discuss quite a bit. So contributions can be financial contribution. So if you're the person that has contributed to the family by going out to work, being the main breadwinner, potentially, maybe you have been investing in shares to try and increase the assets that you have. Anything like that that you may have done to contribute to the family, that would be taken into account. But also taken into account is non-financial contribution. So we know Becky worked full time, and her assets and her contribution would be taken into account because she worked, she contributed to the family financially. But Andrew has also contributed, even though it may not be financial. He has a non-financial contribution. He's taken time out of his career to bring up the children, which is a really big contribution to the family. And that should be taken into account when we're looking at how assets should be decided. So I hope that makes sense. And here we're looking at, lastly, earnings and earning potential. So Andrew has worked part-time for 15 years. His earnings and earning potential are much lower. His mortgage capacity and potential to raise finance will also be lower. And so he might need more assets to allow him to manage financially, because he needs to also house the children half the time. So we really need to look at what his earnings are and what his earning potential is. And it may be that he's not earning a great amount now, but as the children get older and Becky is sharing the childcare with Andrew, he could increase his income, and therefore we know his earning potential is much better. With Becky, we know that she's got good earnings already and earning potential. And so therefore that's taken into account as well. Because if you can raise a mortgage, if you have the ability to save, for example, put money away, then that puts you in a very different situation to the person that isn't earning very much, can't get a big mortgage, potentially does not have any savings at all. And this is where we start looking at, is maintenance necessary? Is it child maintenance? Is it spousal maintenance? And how much would it be? I mean, there's lots of things you need to do to get to a fair settlement and lots of factors to consider. But the most important part of these factors is the welfare of the children, because they are absolute priority. So we have to look at their needs first. So you want to make sure that the children have got stability, they keep, things are not so different for them. If you can, try and keep them in the same location, same school, so that they're not so affected. Sometimes it's just not possible to do that. It may be that you have to change schools because it's just not possible to buy two properties where you just had one in that area. Might be a very expensive area, for example. So you have to think about these things. The settlement that you come to has to cover, as I mentioned right at the beginning, where you are going to live, how much money you have coming in to pay your expenses, What will happen to you on retirement? And also, do you need a lump sum for any reason? So you may need a lump sum if you're staying in the family home because the roof needs doing. And so we need to think about all of these things. What the court is trying to get you to when we're looking at finances is fairness. And an equal split is not always fair. Lots of you will come to me and say, the other person has said everything needs to be split 50-50. I'm really worried because that doesn't give me enough money to buy a house. I don't have enough mortgage capacity. So do know that 50-50 is not always fair. We have to look at lots of factors to decide what's fair. And an equal split is not always the correct way of doing things. So, for example, if Andrew and Becky had shared their assets 50-50, then Andrew would be much worse off as he's got really low earnings and his earning capacity is also very low. He wouldn't be able to get a big enough mortgage to buy a house for himself and to manage financially because he might not even have enough money to rent, for example. He may not be able to pay his bills. So you can see in their situation, 50-50 would not be a fair share of the assets. So just bear that in mind, that it's a really important thing to note. So just going back and explaining to you how the process would work. When you know that you're going through a divorce and you're starting to think, what do we do with finances? The first thing you need to do is talk to your spouse about getting some transparency. So both of you understanding what there is, which was the spreadsheet that I showed you. Both of you complete something like that and get an idea of what you have as a family together. If there are assets missing, so you think there's a bank account missing, you didn't mention that bank account and I know about it, you would have to go through the next stage, which is actually asking questions, saying, what transaction is this? Why was there 50,000 that left your savings account? What about that Halifax bank account that I know you've got? You haven't mentioned that, to give them an opportunity to give you this information. And you'll be doing the same. You'll be providing extra information. So presuming that you got to that stage where you'd asked all your questions, they'd all been answered, you would then look at these factors to see how you need to split your assets to come to a fair agreement around your assets, around your liabilities, and around income as well. So that would be your next stage. And assuming through negotiation you got to that agreement, you completely agreed what you were going to do, you would then need to document that into a consent order. It's also called a clean break order, a financial order by consent as well. So you would document this information into that order so that it's legally binding on you and the other person. Neither of you can change your mind. And at that point, it's completely fixed. The court will turn it into an order. So you know the other person can't change their mind and come after more. Because it may be that you get an inheritance after your divorce. You certainly don't want the other person saying that that's something they should get. You might purchase another property. You could do really well in your career and suddenly the other person wants to have more. So getting that document done, that consent order done, is really important. So I've given you a really quick overview of finances, and I know that there's lots of questions, so I'm going to have a look at them. But before I do that, I'm just going to tell you what I would like you to do if you would like to take the next step. It's really complete the spreadsheet that I'll be giving you, or if you've got something similar, complete that spreadsheet as well. So yes, make sure you do that. And then note down if you and your ex-spouse would like to see evidence of the balances. So you might want to see evidence of their bank account balance. You would ask for 12 months bank statements as standard. And so note that down, that you need to provide 12 months bank statements. With the shares, you would provide a digital share certificate. With the valuation of the property, it might be the estate agent's letter. The mortgage would be something from the lender to show how much you would have to pay if you were paying that mortgage off. So you go through and you can think about the documents that you need to prove the value of all of those assets. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And I do apologize for going through that so fast, but it is very difficult because I'm trying to cover so much in the time that we have. Okay. So I've got a direct message, and feel free to message me directly if you would like to ask questions. I've not worked for most of the marriage, largely due to the kids. He has taken care of most big ticket expenses, utilities, mortgage, cars. My family pay for school fees, kids' clubs, and my general expenses. Where would that leave me with spousal maintenance? Now, that's a really interesting question. So thank you for asking. So you've got quite a lot of expenses, and your family are paying for your expenses, the kids' clubs and the kids' school fees, and he is paying for everything else, I presume. So the way to look at spousal maintenance is to do your income and expenditure. So if you were living on your own, what would your expenses be, and what would your income be? The courts would expect you to apply for benefits first. So you look at if you've got any benefits entitlement. Whether you do or not, the next stage is you put that in your sheet. So if you're getting benefits, put it in your sheet as income. And then we look at what is the difference between your income coming in and your expenses. So if you have a deficit, that means that you're not going to be able to survive. It may be that he would have to pay you a certain amount of money to help you reduce that deficit or get rid of that deficit. So if you find out that you are £500 short, then it may be that your husband would have to, or your wife would have to pay you a sum of money as spousal maintenance to cover that deficit. It's in your interest to bring your expenses down to maximize your income. So the court may expect you to go back to work to maximize your income. And then we look at what is left, where are you short? And that could be spousal maintenance. I hope that helps. It's quite general, but that I don't have enough information. Is it worth getting any properties revalued? Okay. Well, I don't know if you valued them in the past, but I'm presuming you have because you said revalued. You get your properties valued when you're starting out on this process. And if, say, for example, you get to 8 months, you haven't got to an agreement, it may be that that property value is different. And so you need to possibly get them revalued because that valuation is now out of date. So it really depends on your situation. Next question. What if we both agree how much to split and how much maintenance is to be paid between us, but have not disclosed what we have officially on paper, but want a consent order done? Can we simply go to a company who can create a clean break consent order and say we've agreed to XYZ and want it made legal? Yeah, you can say that, but you have to provide the judge a background of your finances. So when a judge will look at this paperwork, they need to understand what there is to see if it's fair or not. Some people would say, well, we've come to an agreement. The other person hasn't disclosed everything, and I don't even want to know what they've got. So we're just going to put in the financial agreement what we want to put. So we give the court a background that we've chosen rather than the actual financial situation. So you could say that that's not strictly the right way of doing it, because when you sign the paperwork for the court, you are signing, it's a statement of truth to say that what you have put down on the documents is absolutely correct. And so obviously you'd be in breach of that. You're signing a legal document and you'd be in breach of that element, which is that you need to disclose everything. But some couples will just put down what they want to put down as a background for the judge. I received a small inheritance from an old friend, not connected to my husband, and I banked it in my sole account. Do I have to share this with him? Okay, the general situation here would be that you don't, have to share it with him, as long as you have not mixed the money. So if you've taken, say, I don't know, £1,000 out to contribute to a family holiday, you've mixed it. If you've taken some money out to pay for clothes for the children, you've mixed it. If you haven't done anything with it, it's still sat in a bank account and nobody has touched that money, then there is a question mark around whether it should be shared. It could be said to be outside of your marital pot. Okay, finances are what is giving me sleepless nights. My ex-husband is the only one named on the marital home, which we purchased after our marriage. We lived there for 10 years. And then one night I had to leave the house after he returned home drunk and started shouting and throwing things around. Me and my children were so afraid. My brother had to come and help us leave the house. My husband is refusing to give me anything. He keeps saying that I cannot divorce him, and if I do, I must not come after his house. Well, just the first point, you can divorce him. As I mentioned yesterday, it's very difficult to stop you if you've made that decision. Secondly, he may say that you mustn't come after his house. He calls it his house. It's not necessarily his house. It's likely to be a marital asset that needs to be shared. So just because it's in his name doesn't mean that it doesn't get shared or sold or anything like that. So we would need to look at your situation to get an idea of the best thing for you to do. Me and the children left in November, and I haven't taken a penny from him for the children. I was in fact paying bills for that house up until last month, which I have now cancelled because that money should be going to my children. He sees the children twice a week as his visits must be supervised. I'm the parent who is doing everything and working part-time, yet I'm the one who's being blamed by him and his family for breaking up the family, but he is abusive. Well, the first thing is he could blame you for anything. His family could blame you for certain things, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get a fair settlement of your assets. You can't stop him from saying certain things, blaming you, telling people it's your fault, and you can't stop his family from doing that. So you have to kind of expect that he will do it, and put it behind you. I know it's really easier said than done, but you will keep going back to that place with them blaming you if you can't sort of move your mindset around, just because there's nothing you can do about that, and you need to do the things that are within your control. So you definitely shouldn't be paying towards the family home bills because he's living there and he can pay them. You should, if you haven't been getting child maintenance, you can do a child maintenance application, and they will assess his income and tell you how much he should be giving you for child maintenance. That's the first thing. And if you do decide that divorce is for you, we need to get a good idea of all the assets and liabilities that there are and what you are entitled to. Have you seen situations where one party does not wish to make a claim on certain aspects of the other party's asset? Say, for example, I don't want to take any of his savings and pensions. Yeah, that's quite normal. It might be that when you're splitting it, you're only sharing the house. You're sharing the sale proceeds of the house, and you decide that everyone keeps their pensions and their savings, and the house sale, the proceeds are split, say, I don't know, 70-30 to make up a fair settlement. So it's quite normal. You need to be careful about pensions though, because lots of people will look at the family home and say, I want to live in the family home. I'll give up the pension. But what happens is then on retirement, you are in a very difficult position because you haven't planned for your retirement. So lots of people should be looking at a pension share during their divorce. So just bear that in mind. I'm not working at the moment, but I handle most of the work on our BTL buy-to-let properties. Also, I'm in remission with my cancer. He is only working part-time, and so his earnings are low for the divorce. He is using depression as an excuse because he has suffered with depression in the past, but work full-time. You'll see that a lot because it happens. It happens so often where one person will give up work. They'll say it's stress, their mental health, depression, even though you know that that isn't the case. So you need to think about maybe think about what his earning capacity is when he's at work. What would he normally earn and put that down. Okay. Is there any detriment to you if you leave the family home? Does it affect your private residence relief on selling it? Okay. So if you leave the family home, it depends on how you've left. Have you transferred it to the other person? Have you moved out while things are being decided? If that's the case, what you need to look at in the short term is being able to get your things that you've left there, be able to consider whether you can get back in the house if you choose to. The other person might change the locks and you might not get back in. And then they may slow down the divorce because they're living in the house, they know you're not. And so therefore they just slow down the whole process. Does it affect your private residence relief? I wouldn't have a clue on that. You would need to speak to an accountant on that. But what I would say is that they wouldn't be capital gains tax. Thank you for answering my question. If we do that, do we have to submit a D81 together or can we do it separately? You should usually do it together. Sorry about the dog. Lucy, sorry. Do apologize. Lucy, Lucy, stop. Come here. Look, who have we got here? It's okay. Okay. Sorry. You can tell it's a live call when the dog goes crazy. She's not even my dog. She's we're dog sitting. If you want to get down now. And then you out. You go. Apologies. You can do a joint D81 if you, and that's the usual way of doing it, but you can do it separately as well. There is provision on the form to say, I have submitted my own D81, but the courts would want a really good reason why you've done that. Okay, I'm going to take this question as my last question. I can see there's quite a few there. The reason my family pay is because he called me a parasite, hence me not wanting to rely on his money. This is part of mental pressure. As per D, I would like to leave the matrimonial home with the kids to avoid verbal abuse. Will this affect my rights to the matrimonial home? If you leave the family home, that doesn't affect your matrimonial rights. If you own it in joint names legally, you know, nobody can take that away. If it's in the other person's name, you still don't lose your rights, your matrimonial interest in that property, but it will be very hard for you to go back. And you may not have any plans to go back, and that's fine. What I would say is then you need to make sure that you've taken everything you need and that you're well settled and know where you're moving to. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. I know there's a few more questions, but I think it's almost an hour. What did you think of today? I had to cover quite a bit in a short space of time. So I hope you got something from that today and you got an idea of how this process might work. As I said, it's difficult to cover everything, but at least there's something there that might be able to move you forward, which is what we want. So thank you for letting me know your thoughts of the session today. It's always good to get an idea of how you found it. Was there information there that was useful? Did you get something that you could take away? Was there something that you could do, take action on to move things forward? So thank you so much for your direct messages and all your feedback there. It's always good to know that it's helping. The sessions are helping. So thank you so much. Tomorrow we are covering children. How do you deal with children on divorce? So looking forward to catching up with you then to talk about that. come with your questions if you've got questions, and obviously I will try and answer them at the end. And I look forward to finding out how you got on with your task today. Let me know if you've done some of that action. Was it useful to fill in a sheet? And I'll ask Nelma to get that sent over to you today. Thursday's topic is all about the different experts involved, so you understand not just how the legal process works, but who you could rely on, who you might need. Because what I always think is a good idea is for you to have a plan. And when you have a plan, you can move forward. And when you know who you need to get help from, you can also move forward a lot more, but keep your costs down. So that's what I'll be talking about on Thursday, is the network that you need around you, how you can keep your costs down, and what support is there for you. So feel free to come along on Thursday. It'd be really good to see you. The financials spreadsheet is already there in the chat box as we speak. Nelma's already put it there. And to the person who said, what's your rate to work with you? Thank you for that question. I don't know who you are because I know that your name didn't come up. But what I'll do is I'll ask Nelma to put my email address in the chat box. So would you drop me an email and I will come back to you. That's okay. It depends what you need really to give you an idea of what the cost would be. And Nelma, is that the workbook that you've linked second there? Contacts us. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nelma, for doing that. It's a spreadsheet. Okay, so we've got the spreadsheet there. Perfect. Okay. I will see you all tomorrow. Look out for the replays and yeah, look forward to seeing your homework. Take care. See you soon. Bye.